All right, let's start this webinar hosted by TCO Development. My name is Martin Soderberg, and I'll be the moderator for this webinar today. I work for the TCO Development Asia office in Taiwan, so I think a lot of people who are logged in here today are from the Asia region and know me quite well. I've been working here in Taiwan for 15 years, and I must say it's really the best place to be, especially now during this pandemic. Life goes on as usual, and schools are open, restaurants are open, and so on. So it's really a good place to be right now. So we have an information-packed webinar for you today, and we have about 2 hours to go through all the suggested changes in the TCO Certified Generation 9 Draft 2. And we released the second draft on the 22nd of February, so it's quite fresh, and this is a bit of a milestone for us. This will be the last draft before we release the final version of the criteria document. And let's have a look at the agenda here for today. So we'll start off with a short introduction to TCO Certified. I'm sure that most of you are quite familiar with who we are, but maybe there are a few of you who are not so familiar with us. And then we'll introduce Generation 9. And after that brief introduction, we'll go into the actual criteria documents and have a look at them chapter by chapter. So we'll go through the first 3 chapters, and then we'll have a first Q&A session. And after that, we'll have a 5-minute break, which should be at the top of the hour, roundabout. So then you'll have some time to get some coffee or stretch your legs or whatever you want to do. And then when we resume again, we'll go through the remaining chapters 4 to 8, and we'll have a second Q&A session, and then it's time to wrap up. So if you have questions, feel free to write them in the questions box in the GoToWebinar tool, and I'll read them when we reach the Q&A sessions. Okay, so let's move into the brief introduction of TCO Certified. So TCO Certified has been around for almost 30 years. We started up in 1992 with the first TCO Certified label, and during that time it was more of a health and safety, user health and safety certification with some energy saving criteria as well. And over the years, the criteria scope has expanded, and also the scope of products that we cover has expanded. Originally, it was only a certification for CRT displays, because a lot of people were worried about sitting in front of electromagnetic emission producing CRT displays all day. And we strive towards a sustainable life cycle for electronics or IT products. So as long as we don't have a sustainable life cycle for IT products, TCO Certified still has work to do. We like to say that TCO Certified is a rather complete certification, which covers both social and environmental responsibility, and we look at products with a life cycle perspective. We cover 11 plus 1 product categories, we say. Now, why am I not saying 12? Because well, 11 plus 1 is 12, obviously, but the thing is that today we cover 11 product categories, and with this second draft of Generation 9, we are also introducing imaging equipment as a 12th product category. We follow a development cycle, which is a 3-year cycle when we develop our criteria documents. The last time we introduced the previous or the current generation of criteria, Generation 8, was released in 2018, and consequently, this is the year to release Generation 9. We are a member of the Global Eco-Labeling Network, GEN, and as such, we are categorized as a so-called Type 1 eco-label. Next slide, please. Something that is very important for us is the independent verification, and this is like a cornerstone of our certification. And this is something that goes on not only before the products are certified, but also once they are certified they are on the market. We can also do follow-ups, as we follow up on the social criteria annually. We also do market checkups where we purchase products anonymously on the market and have them retested to make sure that they still comply. And we can also do factory spot checks to make sure that some of the socially responsible, the criteria related to social responsibility are met. And all of the organizations that do the verification are ISO 17025 certified, so you can be sure that they are independent organizations and that you get test results and evaluations that you can trust. All right, next slide, please. So that was a brief introduction to TCO Certified. I made it brief because I think that most of you are already quite familiar with what we do. So now it's time to have a look at Generation 9. But before we do that, I'd like to point out a few things. I know that some of you have requested machine-generated documents which show exactly which words have been replaced to compare the first draft with the second draft, and also to compare Generation 8 with the second draft. And we do have such documents, so if you want to receive those, please reach out to us and we'll send them to you. We didn't have time to do that for the release of the second draft. And then, as you probably have noticed, we have muted your microphones, so you cannot we cannot hear you speaking. So once again, I urge you to ask questions through the questions box, and feel free to write them at any time, and we'll go through them when we get to the Q&A sessions. All right, so let's move into Generation 9, and I'm gonna turn off my camera here for a while. This presentation is about TCO Certified Generation 9 Draft 2, the draft criteria document which was released on February 22nd. And this is the final draft before we release the final version of the criteria documents. Before we go into detail, I want to give you some background information, show you the development schedule, and let you know how you can give feedback on this draft. I'd like to start by explaining the function of this presentation so that you understand what to expect and what to not expect. So this presentation covers the most important suggested changes compared to Generation 8, and we won't be bringing up details like corrected wording or other small editorial changes. So in the text of the presentation, we focus on the difference compared to Generation 8, but we will also explain the key changes from draft number 1. Unchanged criteria, meaning those that remain the same as in Generation 8, are not presented. So in order to get the complete picture of the criteria, you'll need to read through the criteria documents, which you'll find on our website. Imaging equipment has been added as a new product category, so that's quite a big change. And also with this presentation, we are primarily aiming to reach those of you who are industry stakeholders and are already quite familiar with TCO Certified. So we are aiming at manufacturers and brand owners mainly. I want to take this opportunity to quickly present the team behind Draft 2, and this is essentially the same team that handles the everyday work with the running of the certification. Niklas Rydell is the director of the team, and he's been involved in the background in several areas, but he won't be presenting anything today. Stephen Fuller, who has been working with criteria development for us for many years, he is mainly focused on criteria related to socially responsible manufacturing, as well as chemical and material management. Andreas Nobel has the title Development Manager, and he has been doing the project management for the development of Generation 9. He's been making sure that everyone stays focused and delivers according to the milestones that we set up. And he's also been specifically involved in criteria development, mostly related to product lifetime and things like that. Stefan Karlberg, who normally handles the everyday application approvals and leads that team of certification handlers, is mainly in charge of the criteria for batteries and post-consumer content. Victor Wenström, who is our quality manager and also does most of our software development, has been mainly looking at the energy criteria plus the user health and safety criteria, and also the sustainability performance indicators, or SPIs. My name is Martin Soderberg, and I can't take much credit for the development work, but my job is to channel the information between TCO development and the industry. So you don't really need to remember who's responsible for what. You can always contact me or use our general channels, and I'll make sure that you reach the right person. So the main themes for Generation 9, as we see it, are that we want to take the next step for social responsibility and improve the verification of compliance. And the Accepted Substance List, or ASL for short, has so far only been used for flame retardants and plasticizers, but now we're looking at expanding it to also cover process chemicals. We also want to take the next step for circular economic solutions, extending product lifetime and promoting reuse. We want to have a better benchmarking through the sustainability performance indicators, or SPIs. We want to move from having a mere pass or fail system and making it easier for buyers of IT products to compare and make informed product choices. This is the timeline for the development of Generation 9. We released the first draft on November 6, 2020, and received quite a lot of feedback on the criteria, which is great. There seems to be a lot of interest to follow what we're doing and a strong engagement from the industry. So I'd like to thank all of you who contributed with your written feedback, and thank all of you who took the time to have meetings with us and discuss. We really appreciate this. Draft number 2 was released on February the 22nd and will be open for comments during 1 month. Of course, we'll listen to feedback that we receive after that date also, but in order to be sure that we have enough time to implement changes, or if there's a need for a continued dialogue on specific topics, it's best if we receive your feedback by March the 22nd. Then we can guarantee that we'll take it into account. The final criteria documents for Generation 9 are planned to be released on June the 1st. And from that date, it will be possible to start doing testing and document verification at one of the verification organizations that we have agreements with. However, and it's important to take note here that we will not release any certificates for Generation 9 until we arrive at the launch event, which will take place in early December this year. This means that if you send in an application during the period where it says application open between June 1st and early December, you will first receive a certificate covering the current generation, which is Generation 8, and also receive information if you pass or fail Generation 9. And then on the launch event, we will present all the brands that are the first to reach Generation 9 in no particular order, and there will be some kind of marketing and social activities. We still don't know if we can host a live event or not, or it might have to be online. I'm not really sure. I hope you have understanding for this during this pandemic situation. So, how can you give feedback on this second draft? Well, you're of course welcome to do this in any way or form that you like. But I can tell you that we have set up a special dedicated website where you'll find all the information about the development of Generation 9, including a commentary form, and I'll show you that in a minute. You can also email to us, preferably to myself or Andreas Nobel, who is the project manager for Generation 9. And we're of course also open for the possibility to have online meetings, so just reach out and we'll try to accommodate that. And also, if you are in Taiwan, I'm also available to have face-to-face meetings with you. So how do you reach this Generation 9 website? Well, you go to our website, our main website, tcocertified.com, and then you click on for industry, and you'll find as a sub-menu the next generation development. This is the site where you'll find all the draft criteria documents for download. You'll find the schedule and everything. You'll also find video recordings of this presentation divided by chapters so that you can easily go back and share with anyone who you think might want to have this information. And once you're there, you can scroll down to the bottom of the page where you'll find a form where you can submit comments. We're grateful if you use this, but as I said, you're also welcome to give us feedback in other ways that you prefer. And I'd also like to mention that if you have evidence to back up your comments, that makes your case stronger, of course. So we encourage that. We'll try to respond to all the comments that we receive, but it might take some time to get through them all in case we receive a lot of feedback. So with that, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Andreas Nobel, who will take us through the first chapter of TCO Certified Generation 9, draft number 2.
Thank you, Martin. So before I go into the actual criteria, I would just like to point out that in draft 2, we have marked the changes between draft 1 and 2 with yellow, as you can see here. And for the text that we have removed, we have used the crossed over function and also marked this in yellow. But to improve the readability for where we have done a lot of changes, you will not be able to find the crossed over text for some sections. Instead, you will only find yellow text for the new parts. And this means that you should read the criteria in its full. I would also like to point out that there will be a possibility to receive machine-generated comparison documents with all the changes done in between draft 1 and draft 2, but also from generation 8 to generation 9 draft 2. So with that out of the way, I would like to go through the chapters. So here you can see all the chapters that you will find connected to the criteria in TCO Certified. So first off, we have chapter 1, 2, and 3, which are connected to the material sourcing and manufacturing phase. Then we will go through chapter 4, 5, and 6, which connects to the use and reuse phase. And then last but not least, we will go through chapter 7 and 8, which is linked to the recovery and the recycling phase. So let's start with the first 3 chapters. So chapter 1, product and sustainability information. And I will go through these 3 revised criteria in order. And to point out, the criteria you will see for each headline here will not be all the criteria that can be found in TCO Certified. For that, you will need to read the whole document and look at the actual criteria document. We will only go through the revised and the new criteria compared to generation 8. So first out is information to end users, which is revised. So with this revision, we have tried to make it easier for the purchasers to identify certified models on the brand owner's product webpage. And this has been done through a way that we require the brand owners to put TCO certified in text on the product specific page. Or in a separate document if it is linked from the specific product page. So this is the change compared to generation 8. So hopefully this will help the buyers to find certified products in a more efficient way when browsing the brand owner's webpage. Then if we look at the key changes done in between draft 1 and draft 2, we have made a clarification to point 3, and that is that the inclusion of TCO certified only needs to be represented as text. But we have also given more freedom to the brand owners while keeping the value for the purchasers to easily identify certified models by allowing TCO certified to be represented in a product PDF, such as a product specification PDF that needs to be then linked on the product specific web page. If we move on to 1.2 product specification. This criterion has been changed compared to generation 8 with that the total weight of the typical product configuration and power supply without packaging in kilos must be reported. And the value with this is basically for the purchasers that want to report or calculate on how much e-waste they contribute to and how much they would need to compensate for to become e-waste neutral. So what we asked for in generation 8 was just the weight. It was not defined. So this is a definition, a more of a clarification. So it needs to be the typical product configuration. And this means the configuration which is sold in most numbers. And this is applicable for all product categories. So if we look at the changes between draft 1 and draft 2 for this criterion is that we change from the heaviest configuration to the typical product configuration. And this is because the heaviest configuration is not valid for highly configurable models and product categories. So to get closer to the actual product weight that will be shipped, we decided to go with the typical configuration. And as you can see here, the typical product configuration is defined as the configuration which is expected to be manufactured in the largest number. We also did a change for the clarification part with the weight tolerance. So in draft 1, it stated 5 grams, and we have changed this to plus minus 5% instead, based on feedback. This point is still open for discussion. So if you have other thoughts or you do not think that this is suitable, please let us know since the discussion is still ongoing. Then if we move on to 1.3, sustainability performance indicators, this criterion has received a lot of changes compared to generation 8, and we have further developed it to become a foundation for the development of future generations of TCO certified. And this is through data collection from different criteria. But it will also help provide purchasers with a lot of important sustainability information on certified products through us adding new SPIs to a lot of the existing criteria in TCO certified. It will also function as a basis for the upcoming benchmarking system that will be released after we have released generation 9. And this is so that we can compare products and the buyers can compare products and the brand owners can compare their products within TCO certified. A big change from generation 8 is that we have introduced 3 categories of these so-called SPIs, the sustainability performance indicators, based on who needs to do what and when. So you will find 3 categories, starting with X, which is SPIs that always will be collected during the annual reporting. And this is, basically the things that you do on an annual basis as a brand owner, like the self-assessment questionnaire, the SAQ. Then we have the second category, which is category Y. So these SPIs will always be collected during the product testing or the review of documentation. So this is also something that will just happen automatically and not something that you will need to do extra work with as a brand owner. And then we have category Z, which is optional to report on to gain extra points for the upcoming benchmarking system. But here I would like to point out that all the SPIs, they will be reviewed. So if no additional documentation or information is provided for the set category, these SPIs will receive the lowest score, the lowest classification. So this means that we want to create an incentive for the brand owners to actually provide data here. Even though that the data might be lacking, they will still receive a higher classification based compared to not doing anything. So if we look at the key changes here then from draft 1 to draft 2, first out is that we have changed the name of this criterion from sustainability performance to sustainability performance indicators. We have removed the published and non-published categorization because we are now only addressing SPIs that will be used to benchmark the performance of products within different aspects of the certification and to provide purchasers with information on sustainability benefits of the certified products. The new clarification section explaining which SPIs that will be collected by whom and when has been added. So this is a key change from draft 1 to draft 2, as I mentioned before. And we have also added new SPIs to the criteria that you will find in TCO certified. And with that, I would like to end for the 1.3 sustainability performance indicators criterion that all the SPIs that you will find in this chapter, they are linked to actual criteria within TCO Certified. So if you want to read about the specifics for a certain SPI, you need to go to the corresponding criteria that it's linked towards in chapter 1.3. So with that, I would like to hand over to my colleague Steve, who will take you through chapter 2.
Thank you, Andreas. Chapter 2 covers the criteria for socially responsible manufacturing. Here I'll be talking about the second draft revisions to the requirements covering supply chain responsibility, anti-bribery management system, responsibly sourced minerals, and process chemical management. After each of these slides, and for the benefit of those that read the first draft, I'll add a summary of the major changes made between the first and second draft versions. The revisions to the supply chain responsibility mandate are intended to create stricter requirements on audits and improve brand owner awareness and responsibility of suppliers beyond final assembly factories. Firstly, the approved audit types to be conducted at final assembly factories will now be limited to RBA VAP and S8000. We do this to increase the quality of the audit verification process and be sure that the audit covers the whole factory under one business license. Of the audit types we presently accept, these two make up the majority we receive. Another revision to this mandate is that each final assembly factory of certified products must submit the TCO Certified Supply Chain Identification template. The information required in the template covers the final assembly factory's next tier major suppliers of parts and packaging to the certified product. The template is intended to show how well the final assembly factory manages their socially responsible program toward major suppliers. It's considered that final assembly factories that have a good management system will be able to easily complete the mandate or the template, since they monitor and audit their next tier major suppliers regularly. For other factories, this template presents an opportunity to help identify areas for improving management systems, to collect the relevant information, or to conduct due diligence to understand the risks. Additionally to submitting the template, we require independent verification that the approved code of conduct is communicated to the next tier major suppliers, and that there is a process to ensure that they are working in a structured way to follow the code. Proof of compliance is by RBA VAP or S8000 audits conducted at the final assembly factory showing a compliant management system. Continuing with important revisions to the supply chain responsibility requirement, a new option has been included that addresses the challenges facing trade unions and varying levels of worker representation at factories. Here we are providing factories that have a democratically functioning trade union or other credible form of worker representation a unique chance to have these independently verified. For TCO Certified Generation 9, this is not a mandatory requirement, but rather an option for a final assembly factory looking to improve their risk category ranking from 2 to 3 on the TCO Certified Accepted Factory list. Verification of compliance will cover the major key points in the representative questionnaire provided by TCO Development. These key points and the method by which the factory must prove compliance by independent audit are given in the mandate's clarification section. Key changes to mention between first and second drafts are that the second draft now makes clear that the upstream suppliers in scope of the mandate are the final assembly factory's next tier major suppliers of parts and packaging to the certified product, and that these major suppliers are determined by the criteria defined by the final assembly factory. Also, the supply chain identification template has been updated and is now available in a second draft version. Anti-bribery management system. TCO Certified Generation 8 requires the independent assessment of brand owner anti-corruption management systems, and that these meet with our minimum level of compliance. Brand owners presently certifying their products have proven compliance with the International Chamber of Commerce guidelines for anti-corruption and whistleblowing. For TCO Certified Generation 9, the intention is now to raise the level of how the brands work in preventing corruption from a minimum to a moderate level by requiring independent verification of their anti-bribery management system. Proof of compliance to this revised mandate will be through the brand owner submitting an ISO 37001 certificate or by completing the TCO Certified Anti-Bribery Questionnaire that includes a review of documented proof and an interview between the brand owner responsible person and an approved independent verifier. A key change to mention between first and second drafts is that some clarification and scoring updates have been made to the first draft of the anti-bribery questionnaire. This questionnaire is now available in the second draft version on the TCO Certified Generation 9 webpage. Responsibly sourced minerals. During the 6 years we've included responsibly sourced minerals criteria, we have worked to increase the level of brand owner engagement in established programs, tools, and in-region initiatives that are a collaboration of stakeholders working to improve supply chain due diligence and support local mining communities. For TCO Certified Generation 9, our focus now turns to driving increased engagement with programs that independently validate that the management systems at smelters and refiners are in line with the OECD due diligence guidance. This means that we are looking to monitor and verify that the ongoing supply chain due diligence brand owners are presently required to conduct through their supply chains doesn't end when smelters and refiners are identified, but that these facilities are also engaged in due diligence management to source minerals responsibly. Programs presently considered to validate this are the Responsible Minerals Assurance Process that has a program underway, and the European Commission that is in the process of creating their so-called whitelist of global smelters and refiners which source responsibly. For continued compliance to this mandate, brand owners will be required to annually submit the TCO Certified Responsibly Sourced Minerals template that covers tin, tungsten, tantalum, gold, and cobalt. This template works to verify brand owner responsible sourcing goes beyond the identification of smelters and refiners in their supply chains, and to also increase awareness and engagement with facilities that are compliant to one or both of these due diligence validation programs. Key changes to mention between first and second drafts is that it is made the brand owner's responsibility to submit the completed template. Also, the Responsibly Sourced Minerals template has been updated and is now available in a second draft version on the TCO Certified Generation 9 webpage. Processed chemicals. In TCO Certified Generation 8, we introduced a new mandate that required manufacturers to submit data on the types of chemicals being used at factories manufacturing certified products, and also the type of training and protective equipment workers were provided. To manage the scale of gathering this data, we use the Process Chemical Data Collection tool created by the Clean Electronics Production Network, CEPN. Assessment of the data proved to us that here again there was an urgent need for a list of independently assessed safer alternatives. We know from our work with flame retardants and plasticizers that an accepted list of chemicals works to guide industry away from making regrettable substitutions. There are many chemicals not on a restriction list will have unknown hazard levels that potentially mean that these chemicals are equally or more hazardous than the chemicals they are intended to replace. Also, a list that is public speeds up the shift to using safe alternatives throughout the supply chains. Therefore, the revised mandate for process chemicals in TCO Certified Generation 9 requires that chemical ingredients that make up the cleaning product above the threshold of 1000 ppm must be independently assessed and appear on the TCO Certified Accepted Substance list for process chemicals. The factory production lines in scope are those where product and printed circuit board cleaning is required for the certified products. To add or keep a chemical on the accepted substance list, it must be independently assessed by a licensed green screen profiler and achieve green screen benchmark 2, 3, or 4. This means that any chemical not on the accepted substance list is restricted until it is proven to be a safer alternative to use. Chemical ingredients are listed on the accepted substance list as CI. A chemical cleaning product is often a mixture or formulation of more than one chemical. Therefore, an option to benchmarking cleaning ingredients is that we will also accept chemical products that have been assessed and certified in accordance to Green Screen Certified, Silver or Gold rating. On the accepted substance list, these certified chemical products will be listed as CP, and their trade name will also be stated. With this public list, it is then up to the chemical suppliers to confirm to the manufacturer using their chemicals that the cleaning products only contain ingredients that appear on the accepted substance list with approved benchmark scores. Alternatively, a manufacturer can confirm that their chemical product appears on the accepted substance list with an approved rating Silver or Gold. Silver and Gold means that the chemical product only contains ingredients that are benchmark 2 or higher. If manufacturers or chemical suppliers see a chemical they use is not on the accepted substance list or isn't benchmarked or certified, then a transition period is agreed upon that will allow them time to continue to use the chemical whilst it is assessed or substituted with an accepted chemical. Finally, for this mandate, there is a revised requirement on environmental health and safety management systems. There, we require all final assembly factories to be certified in accordance to ISO 45001. This means we will remove the social audit options we permitted in TCO Certified Generation 8. We see that the majority of final assembly factories presently registered to us are certified to OSAS 18001. But with certifications to that standard no longer being valid after March this year, factories need to make the transition to ISO 45001. A couple of key changes to mention between first and second drafts is that I'm pleased to say that since the launch of the first draft of TCO Certified Generation 9, we completed the draft list of accepted process chemicals. This list is now public on the TCO Certified Generation 9 webpage. The early launch of the list is to help prepare industry for the transition to these safer alternatives ahead of the final launch of TCO Certified Generation 9. The other change in the clarification section of this requirement is that with an agreed plan of action, we will permit a factory up to 24 months to become certified to ISO 45001 standard. And now I'd like to hand over to Victor.
Thank you, Steve. So now we're going to take a look at Chapter 3 and environmentally sustainable manufacturing, where we have 4 points that we will go through. We have energy efficiency indicators, which has been revised. We have a new criteria for energy management system. We have a new criteria for post-consumer recycled content and a new criteria for product carbon footprint. So for energy efficiency indicators, we have updated the annual submissions to only include total energy consumed by the factory, the percentage of renewable energy consumed by the factory, and measure the energy improvements compared to the previous years. So the submission for the energy efficiency indicators, which applies to all final assembly factories, is at the end of August each year and reporting on the previous year. So the changes from draft 1 to draft 2 was that we reverted back from April to the end of August. So the date is the same as for generation 8. For 3.3, energy management system. So working with energy improvements is important in multiple aspects of a product's life cycle and not just in the use phase. So we have a long-term goal of approaching energy use in the manufacturing of IT products and especially further down the supply chain. So with this criterion, we're taking the first step by introducing ISO 50001 as a requirement for final assembly factories. We're giving all factories 24 months time to implement ISO 50001, as we know this process can be consuming for factories, can be time consuming for factories that have not had any energy management system previously. So this is now harmonized. The implementation time is harmonized with other criteria in TCO certified as well. So we're also looking at alternative requirements for factories with less than 100 employees that we received feedback on, which could be the cost to implement is very high in relation to the few number of workers. So we're still looking at alternative requirements for this. And the key changes from draft 1 to draft 2 is that we extended the allowed extension from 18 to 24 months to align with similar criteria in TCO certified, like I mentioned. 3.4 post-consumer recycled content. So with the post-consumer recycled content criterion, we are looking to strengthen our position on post-consumer recycled materials in TCO certified products. Our goal with this criterion is to provide a more fair and accurate picture of the amount of post-consumer recycled content in products. We want to make it easier to identify the relevance of the percentage of post-consumer recycled plastics in a product. So this will be achieved by measuring the total weight of all plastic parts and the weight of post-consumer recycled plastic parts. So we have also updated the applicability to cover the typical product configuration also in order to provide a more nuanced picture. So the mandate requires reporting of the percentage of post-consumer recycled plastic by weight versus the total weight of all plastics, and also the percentage of identified post-consumer recycled materials by weight versus the product weight. So the key changes here for draft 1 to draft 2 is heaviest to typical configuration, removal of renewable materials, as we received a lot of feedback that is very difficult definition to find something that fits, and also very few stakeholders have any good data on this. We've also added a clarification on accepted materials and documented proof, which is required for compliance with this criterion. Product carbon footprint. This criterion is a sustainability performance indicator, which uses a classification system for product carbon footprint of IT products. So the criterion is intended to identify what methods and data are used for estimating the product carbon footprint of IT products, and also to evaluate the availability of these. So the criterion encourages more extensive product carbon footprints in order to drive data gathering and identification of hotspots in the life cycle of IT products in order to establish better and more comparable product carbon footprints measurements in the future. So the criterion results in a classification of the product for the PCF method used, the age of data, and for the availability of the product carbon footprint. And if no product carbon footprint has been conducted for the product, it will receive the lowest classification. But so this means that products are not required to have a product carbon footprint, but with the future use of a benchmarking system, it will be encouraged to have so. We have also received some late comments on additional methods and comparability of product carbon footprint, which we will investigate further until the final document is released. So we're still open for suggestions on how to further enhance this criterion. But our long-term goal is to be able to provide purchaser with reliable comparative data for the PCF on certified products. And this is the first step for us to gather the methods used by the industry and to promote those who are doing more to map the environmental impacts of their product. So the key changes from draft 1 to draft 2 is that we added the INEMI Eco Impact Estimator. We added a classification on availability, and we added a clarification on the possibility to submit PCFs at a later stage in order to improve the classification. So even though a PCF might not be available at the time of certification, it's possible to submit and reevaluate at a later stage. And with that, I want to hand over to Martin and the first Q&A session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Victor. So, as Victor said, we're entering now the first Q&A session, and we have received quite a lot of, or some questions at least. So we're going to go through some questions and give you answers here, and then we will go to have a 5-minute break after this Q&A session. So let me bring out the first question here. The first one is, will TCO development charge us twice for TCO Certified Generation 8 and Generation 9 if we apply before December? I would like to ask Andreas to comment on that one.
No, so when we release the final criteria documents in June, then it will be possible to apply for Generation 9. And if you do so, you will be given a temporary Generation 8 certificate until we launch Generation 9 in December. And then that Generation 8 certificate will be upgraded free of charge if the product do pass all the criteria set in Generation 9. So no, we will not charge you twice if you apply between June and December.
Okay, I'm sure many of our listeners are relieved to hear that. Okay, so let's move to the next question. On page 16 in the second draft, would you please add there is no mandatory level for these indicators after the results will be used to benchmark ... benefits of certified products. Victor, maybe you can take this one.
Yes, absolutely. So, like Andreas explained earlier, we have 3 different categorizations of the SPIs: those which are gathered annually, those which are gathered together with the application process, and those which are voluntary to submit additional information in order to create this evaluation. But like the question says, there is no mandatory level, but there is for some criteria which are connected, or for some SPIs which are connected to the mandates, there is a there is a sort of mandatory level, which is obviously the criteria or the mandates for different criteria. But we will look at how to explain this further. We have written in a few SPIs clarifications that there are no mandatory levels, but maybe we need to do that on a more general level. We will look into that.
Okay, thank you, Victor. Okay, next question. On page 16 in the second draft, related to criterion 2.2, for the SAQ questions 1 to 8, will they be categorized as green, yellow, and red?
Yes, that is correct. For the absolute majority of them, that's how we perceive that we will use those figures, because all for all the SAQs there is nothing additional going on. I mean the information which is which will be gathered is during the SAQ as normally. So and that results in different in the categorizations, red to green, like you say. So that's the categorizations for those SPIs as well.
All right. Another question on this is, I'm not sure if you remember, Victor, here, what is written on which page, but this is referring to page 53. Please change to brand owner from applicant on the 3.4.1 mandate.
Yes, so I think this is the post-consumer recycled content criteria. I believe that we had this discussion from during the first draft. We will need to have a look at it, whether or not it should be applicant or brand owner. I think we've received different different requests from different stakeholders, so we will probably need to look at that going forward.
So I think we need to enter the break, but keep sending your questions, and we'll have a second Q&A session later on. But first we'll take a 5-minute break, and then so now you can go and get some coffee or whatever you want to get, and we'll be with you in 5 minutes. So keep sending your questions. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everyone. We are halfway through our webinar about Generation 9 Draft 2, and we are receiving a lot of questions. We didn't have so much time to go through them during the first Q&A session, but don't worry, we will have more time during the second Q&A session, so just keep writing those questions in the questions box. So now I'd like to hand over to my colleague Victor Wenström, who will take us through Chapter 4.
Thank you, Martin. And now we're going to have a look at the Chapter 4, User Health and Safety section. And here we have 2 points which have been revised or removed. So we have electrical safety, which has been revised, and keyboard, which has been removed for notebook category. So for the electrical safety criterion, we are updating the standard required in the mandate to EN/IEC 62368-1 edition 2, which replaces the EN/IEC 69950 and EN/IEC 60065, as these are now withdrawn and can no longer be used. So the key changes from draft 1 to draft 2 is the edition clarification that the requirement is for edition 2 or newer. And the criteria for keyboards, keyboard displacement, has been removed. And the reason for this is that the industry standards already manage this, and TCO Certified feels that no need to continuously verify this. And there are no changes from draft 1 to draft 2 on this criteria. Next up, we have product performance. And here we have energy efficiency, which has been revised. We have a new criteria, performance benchmarking. And we also have 3 new criteria for the new imaging equipment criteria document. So for our energy efficiency criteria that are in line with Energy Star, we have updated the version requirements to the latest active versions that can be seen on the slide here. And And we've also added for the displays a requirement on reporting of the EU Energy Efficiency Index, which must be calculated for each product in order to better adhere to European purchasers. And as in the previous generation of TCO certified, these products do not need to be Energy Star certified, but they need to meet the requirements of the standard. So also new for generation 9 is that tablets are now also included in the Energy Star standard. So they're included in the computer standard. And also key changes from draft 1 to draft 2 is that we have added computer categories. So for computers that may be highly customizable products that classify into different categories under the Energy Star standard, we will now require reporting for each category in order to provide a more fair picture of the product capabilities. So products with large variety of performance will now be reflect the different performance for different categories. And then we have performance benchmarking. This new criterion aims to quantify the performance capabilities of computer products in order to categorize products into different use scenarios. The purpose for this criterion is to give purchasers additional information in regards to what type of work different computer products are suited for. It will also be used to estimate the usable lifetime of a product based on its performance in relation to historically computational development. So the mandate requires that the computer products are evaluated with the use of PC Mark test suite, which will result in a few different scores for both performance and battery use time. And in generation 9, we will have no lower limit for performance. So that means that there is no minimum score requirement for the different components of the PC Mark test suite. We have also received some comments about adding Bitcom performance benchmarking as an additional benchmark. But we have sadly not had time to investigate this for draft 2. But if there are other stakeholders who want to see this implemented, please reach out to us so that we can look into it further as an additional fulfillment. So the key changes from draft 1 to draft 2 is clarifications on which test suites for different operating systems. So it's now very clear what applies to what operating systems. And then we have 3 new criteria for the imaging equipment criteria document, and I won't go into them on detail, but the performance criteria in TCO Certified Generation 9 for imaging equipment are harmonized with the EU GPP criteria, where we have selected the most important criteria in order to reduce the environmental footprint of imaging equipments in the use phase. So TCO Certified can therefore be used to verify compliance with these criteria in the EU Green Public Procurement. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Stefan.
Thank you, Victor, for your presentation, and I'm going to continue with Chapter 6, Product Lifetime Extension. As you can see, we have added a few more revised criterions from Generation 8 now and from the Draft 1. And the following is product warranty, replaceable components, product durability, battery longevity, battery replaceability, battery information and protection, and secure data removal from products, and standardized external power supplies. On top of this, we have also launched now the new product category imaging equipment, which have four mandates in Chapter 6 as well that I'm going to talk about. And you can see them below. And now I'm going to continue with the first revised criteria, that's product warranty. In Generation 8, we had it as well, and the brand owner must provide a product warranty for at least 1 year. and provide information about minimum product warranty period for the product covering all markets where the product is sold. We have added 2 SPIs for the product warranty and service agreement availability. And I want to emphasize on some of the key changes between the drafts as following, that we added the following in the mandate. So as you saw in the previous picture, provide all information about the minimum product warranty period for the product covering all markets where the product is sold. So this is one of the key changes between the drafts, and the new SPIs, warranty period with the classification of A to D, and service agreement availability class A to F. And this leads me to the next criterion, replaceable components. From generation 8, we have added new product categories. We combined servers, storage, network equipment, and imaging equipment into a more general criteria. So you can find all the critical replaceable components now collected in one and the same criteria. We have added a clarification on headband cushioning for headsets, and we added 4 SPIs, as you can read here. Fasteners and connectors, necessary tools for repair, availability of spare parts, comprehensiveness of available information, and all have different classifications. We will verify those SPIs through the service manual that the brand owner will provide together with the product. And the evaluation is based on the new standard EN 45554. The key changes between the drafts in replaceable components is that we have now removed or exempted soldered components from the step-by-step instructions manuals. We have added as SPI for displays, and we have removed the critical component GPU from servers. So those are the key changes from our view in this criterion. And then we have standardized connectors, where we have removed smartphones and headsets from the applicability of the criterion. And the decision behind removing smartphones and headsets is that if you look at those product categories in going forward, we can see that that more and more of manufacturers are actually removing connector points to, for instance, smartphones, and the headsets are more and more wireless. So in order to not limit those product categories to be able to be certified for this criterion, we have removed them from this specific criterion. And then we have USB Type-C female adapters no longer an option to fulfill the mandate. And products with no connectors at all are exempted from this criteria. Product durability revised. We made some minor changes and updates on this criterion from generation 8, where the definitions of the latest meal standard is now up to date, and accordingly we also matched the different reference methods, as you can see here, for the drop test, high temperature and low temperature, and the applicability for those for this product durability criterion is for notebooks, smartphones, and tablets. So here I would say it's minor changes, only refreshing and updating. Battery longevity. For this criterion, we made a lot of different changes from generation 8. We added SPIs, a score on longevity for the battery on the product. We increased the minimum requirement from 60% to 80% of SOC, and we also changed this measurement from rated capacity to initial capacity after 300 cycles. We added new tests from the standard, measurement of internal AC resistance and DC resistance. And we also included that the manufacturers or the brand owners now need to add extra evidence in form of Excel sheets that reports all cycles up to 300 cycles that are used in the battery tests of ECS 61960. We also added a new estimation methodology for battery times in years. And I would like to just mention or speak a little bit about the decision to keep the initial capacity. because we got a lot of feedback, but we still decided to keep the initial for the final draft, and changes can still be applied for the final draft, of course. But the problem that we have identified with rated versus initial capacity is that some batteries in the report that we have received during generation 8, they receive more than 100% of SOC after 300 cycles when measured with rated capacity. So this is one problem that we have identified. The other one is that the degradation of a battery will always start from the initial capacity. And the customer that buys the product will only experience the initial capacity, and this goes, of course, the same for the purchasers. So on top of that, when estimating further cycles for a battery, it's really important to understand that the battery degradation always starts from the initial capacity, not the rated. And the worst case scenario would actually be that a battery could already have reached 80% SOC of the initial capacity of the degradation when the rated capacity says that it still has 100% of rated capacity left. So those are some of the issues I want to just lift and would invite more feedback on and more discussions around the decision for keeping the initial capacity of the 300 cycles. Some of the key changes between the drafts are that we have reword. We did a rewording from battery life to instead use optimum battery performance. A lot of feedback connected to this was that a battery after 80% of SOC degradation, the battery is not, this does not mean that you need to replace the battery. So we are using optimum battery performance instead. That it's safe to say that within the first 20% of the battery cycles, it's much more safe to estimate how the battery will perform. We have updated the most common user pattern from Energy Star, and we have removed charge capacity retention and recovery from the mandate. So this makes the mandate easier for fulfillment. We also added information about the estimation of more battery cycles calculated with Coulombic efficiency extrapolation. And this is the key why we need to have the extra data from the brand owners now, including all cycles up to 300 cycles when we will estimate using this technique. And then we have battery replaceability. Small changes here. We add the earbuds, or we exempted earbuds and earphones that are subcategories for headsets. And we added a new SPI, tool-less battery replacement, where you can have class A or B. Battery information and protection. So the brand owner must provide, this is total new for from generation 8, so everything is new here for those that didn't watch the draft 1. The brand owner must provide battery protection software that can lower the maximum battery charge level to at least 80%. It must be pre-installed on the product. And 2, the brand owner must provide software that can determine and monitor the following: state of health, state of charge, and the number of full charge cycles that the battery has gone through. The key differences between the drafts are that we moved the peak performance capability to SPI from the mandate, and we moved intelligent charging as well down to SPI instead of having it still in the mandate. So the total SPIs that we have now in draft 2 is battery protection and software as default setting, peak performance, and intelligent charging software. And then we have secure data removal from products. From generation 8, we have included 3 new options. As you can see here, the brand owner must provide a media sanitation solution either by 4, providing a remote secure data removal service upon request, free of charge, providing an on-site secure data removal service upon request, free of charge, or pre-installed data encryption technologies that allow for erasure or removal of the encryption keys. The key changes between the drafts is the 2 added SPIs. media sanitation solution, class A to B, compliance with the standard EN 45554 for data management, class A to B, and one additional option, the option 6 that you saw in the previous slide, pre-installed data encryption technologies that allow for erasure or removal of the encryption keys. Here we have standardized external power supply compatibility. It's new from generation 8, and we did a lot of reworking with the text of the mandate in this between the drafts. The first point in the mandate is that the product must carry USB Type-C standardized receptacle port for USB power delivering according to the standard, or the product must have a built-in wireless charging capability that complies with QI wireless power transfer system. We added 2 SPIs, type of standardized external power supply distributed with the product, class A to B, lifetime extension of charges, class A to C. So just to emphasize here on the key changes, we did a whole rewording of the whole mandate test. So go in and look through the mandate text. It's going to be the same as I showcased in the slide before, but go into the criteria document and read it through so you understand what we mean now in draft 2 compared to draft 1. We removed desktops from the mandate and we added SPI, type of standardized external power supply distributed with the product class A to B. We also updated the standard correctly to IEC 63002. And now we're moving into the new product category, imaging equipment. So the first one is capability to use remanufactured cartridges and containers. The product must not be designed to prevent remanufactured toner and or ink cartridges and containers. Constructive software-based or other measures that prevent the use of remanufactured cartridges and containers must not be present or applied. The other one is prolonged lifetime of consumables, totally new with the new product category. Cartridges or containers shipped with the product must not be purposefully designed to limit the ability to reuse or remanufacture. Examples of features which are deemed to limit the ability to remanufacture or promote non-reuse include but are not limited to statements on the cartridge or container or packaging which declare or imply that the product is not designed to be remanufactured. Consumable quality, also for imaging equipment, all toner, cartridges, and or containers shipped with the product must be tested to and comply with at least one of the following quality standards. And the standards you can read here below. And we added the last point, or an equivalent quality standard for cartridges and containers. So for all the imaging equipment brand owners interested in certifying for the new product category, you need to read the new, totally new draft document now released with draft 2. And the next one is firmware update control, imaging equipment as well. Any firmware update must not prevent the use of reused, remanufactured consumables. The product must include functionality, allowing firmware updates to be rolled back to previously installed versions. And this was my last slide for chapter 6. And I'm really happy that you have been listening to my presentation of chapter 6. And now I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Stephen Fuller, to continue the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stefan. For this chapter, I'll be talking about the draft revisions for the reduction of hazardous substances. This slide covers 2 separate mandates. One is our restrictions on halogens, and the other covers the non-halogenated substances on our public TCO Certified Accepted Substance list for non-halogenated flame retardants. Now, we have for many years restricted the use of halogens from the product housing parts over 25 grams, whilst giving exemptions to plastic parts under 25 grams, all printed circuit boards, cables, and electronic components. We've also, for 6 years, guided industry to what restricted halogenated flame retardants should be substituted with by adding independently assessed safer alternatives to our accepted substance list. For TCO Certified Generation 9, we now raise the bar to require that any non-halogenated flame retardant added in any way to the product housing or printed circuit board laminates that are above the plastic part weight threshold of 0.5 grams must appear on our accepted substance list. For the halogens mandate only, an additional verification on the restriction of halogenated substances will be included. The draft proposal makes it a requirement that the largest PCB in both the product and internal or external power supplies must be tested for the presence of halogens. These halogens are bromine and chlorine. The accepted test options are XRF screening, EN 14582, or ion chromatography, and that the conducted test is carried out by an ISO 17025 accredited laboratory. Key changes to mention between first and second drafts is that the first is that since we will be including printed circuit boards and smaller plastic parts, several stakeholders requested an improved definition of what is considered to be product housing and an electronic component. We have updated both of these under the definition section for improved clarity on what is in and out of scope of the mandate. The other key difference, as I mentioned earlier, is that we have listed more accepted options to test for the presence of the common halogens, chlorine and bromine used on the PCB laminates. These are, as I said, XRF screening, EN 14582, and ion chromatography, as long as testing is carried out at accredited ISO 17025 laboratories. And now back to Andreas.
Thank you, Steve. So now over to Chapter 8, Material Recovery. So here we have 3 criteria that have been revised, removed, or that are new. And I will start off with the product packaging criteria 8.1. So from Generation 8 to Generation 9 Draft 2, we have added 3 new sustainability performance indicator suggestions in the clarification part of this criterion. And this is based on feedback that we have received from purchasers and brand owners. So the first one is about FSC certified packaging material. And here we would like to receive a lot of comments and suggestions on what these different levels should be for packaging materials connected to FSC certified material. The second thing we added was recycled content in primary packaging. And primary packaging, to clarify, is the retail packaging, often the glossy box if it's used for packaging. But apart from that, it's the packaging that contains the information to the end user, the packaging that is used for the individual product. And then for recycled content in the secondary packaging, that type of packaging is the packaging used when basically shipping in bulk and shipping multiple products. So that is the outer layer for multiple products. So for this, these 2 aspects, we would also like to get a lot of input on doable levels. For the key changes between draft 1 and 2, it's basically just that we added these 3 SPIs. No other changes have been made to 8.1. So moving on to Chapter 8.2, e-waste compensation, which is a totally new criterion. Here we state that the following needs to be reported annually. by the end of August. And the first thing we want to collect is the data on the number of certified products manufactured. Second is that we want to collect information about all the countries the certified products were sold in. And third is the name of the take-back systems or extended producer responsibility schemes used for each country. And for these three first parts is that we want to see basically the coverage of take-back systems compared to where the certified products are sold in. And this will serve as a basis for future generations of TCO certified criteria in future generations of TCO certified. Basically meaning that we might include criterion on that the brand owner needs to include coverage of X% with take back for the markets where they are selling the certified products in. And for the fourth point, we want to collect the name and addresses of the reuse and recycling facilities that are currently processing the collected products together with the standards met by these facilities, such as R2, e-stewards, EN 50625 or equivalent. And this is because we want to build a list of more reliable and better alternatives when it comes to reuse and recycling that can be shown to the purchasers so that they can take more informed decisions when they want to get rid of their products or give their products a second life. And apart from this, we also added 3 SPIs to the clarification. So the first SPI that we added is that the brand owner certifying the products should have a membership in a multi-stakeholder initiative working towards solving the problems connected to e-waste. So if you read the criterion, you will find examples of such multi-stakeholder initiatives that we think are good. And if you have ideas for other initiatives that you want to promote and that you think TCO Certified should promote, please get back to us and we'll try to include these as well. And for the second SPI, we included a use of international accredited reuse and recycling facilities. So basically, this will track how well the brand owners are doing in using these types of recyclers and reuse facilities when it comes to, basically accreditation towards certain standards. The third SPI is about brand owner public policy for treatment of electronics. And this is to push the brand owners to have a public policy for treatment of electronics. So this SPI is also open for suggestions. So please do get back to us with feedback on this and we'll try to iron out what should be in this public policy and what shouldn't. If we look at the key changes from draft 1 to draft 2, we can see that we changed the reporting date from April to August. And this is to harmonize with the other reporting dates in TCO Certified, but also to give the brand owners more time to collect this data. We also removed the following points from the draft 1 mandate. And the first one was the number of products collected on the brand owner's expense, which are of the same product category as the certified product. This shown to be nearly impossible to collect as of today, and thus we had to remove this. The second point we had to remove was the percentage of these collected products that are processed to be reused. And the third one to be recycled. And that's just an effect of that we could not collect the first point. And in addition, as I said before, we added 3 SPIs to this criterion. Then between generation 8 and generation 9 draft 2, we come into next criterion, material coating of plastics. So here we saw that there were a limited sustainability benefit for smaller devices. And based on this, we decided to remove this criterion for notebooks, tablets, smartphones, and headsets, as these products are often not taken apart by hand, and thus the separation is happening in a more automated way where the products are grinded instead. But for the other product categories, this criterion still exists and needs to be fulfilled. So the key changes between draft 1 and draft 2 is that no changes were made. Then we come into chapter 11, which were not included in draft 1. So this is completely new for draft number 2. And here you will find that we have reworked these forms to just show which criteria they point towards. And now we have also connected these forms to an external application spreadsheet, which can be downloaded at the development page of Generation 9 if you want to look at it. And this new application spreadsheet, it will basically include more of how to for the brand owners and the verification organizations. So it will be easier to understand who needs to do what for each criterion. And this new form, these new forms will also be used as the application forms in Generation 9. And we hope that this will help ease the application process and ease what needs to be reported and what does not need to be reported to comply with TCO Certified. So we would like to get a lot of feedback on these application spreadsheets if you have the time, that is, but it would be much appreciated. And with that, I would like to hand over to Martin again. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Andreas. We've gone through a whole lot of information here. I understand that it might be too much to grasp for you. So the good thing is that we will have recordings of all these presentations available on our dedicated Generation 9 website. So you can always go back there and listen in case there is something that you want to go back to that you missed. All right, so let's go to the questions. And we have received quite a lot of questions during the time that the guys have been presenting here. So I'm going to go through a majority of them. All right, my dear colleagues, will you please turn on your webcams so we can see you? All right, let's take this question first. Or this is actually not so much of a question, but more of a comment, perhaps. Please delete brand owner's code of conduct must be effectively communicated to the next tier major suppliers on 211. Because next tier major suppliers will receive many brand owner code of conducts. Maybe Steve, you would like to comment on that one?
Sure. Okay, it's these points are checked. The code of conduct and the supplier engagement at the final assembly factories. These are points that are covered in IBA VAPs and S8000 certifications. So we look at the E section, the E12 section of an audit. Compliance in these parts, E12.1 and E12.2. If you have compliance there, then you will be compliant to this level. So this is the standard operation of informing the supply chain of the code of conduct down the supply chain.
All right. I think the next question is for you also, Steve. For ASL cleaning ingredient, any allowance period for transition to ASL substances?
Yes, there will be. You know, when we work with phasing out the transition of substances on the ASL, then if there is a plan, implementation plan that we agree upon, then we can also agree on the transition period to either phase out the chemical or have it substituted or assessed with green screen profiler.
All right. So next question, which I will direct at Victor. Should the PCF be third-party verified, or will any internal PCF calculation be okay?
Yeah. So like I mentioned during the presentation, I mean, we do this criteria now in order to begin mapping on what type of data do different stakeholders have available for estimating the carbon footprint for the product. So we will allow internal PCF estimations as long as they meet the requirements as specified in the PCF method. I mean, for example, we currently know that a lot of brand owners use the PIA tool in order to prove the PCF of the product, and that is basically brands inputting information themselves and then getting a result out of that calculation. So short answer, yes.
And Victor, about that, maybe we should clarify also that it's not mandatory.
Yes.
To do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think we received some questions about that further down. So yes, it's not a requirement to conduct a PCF of the product for generation 9. It might be for generation 10, but we know that there is the large demand from purchasers to be able to access PCFs for products, and I mean, the core reason is that they want to make better choices and find products which have a lower carbon footprint. Yeah. But we don't feel that there's one solution to fix that currently. So that's what we're working towards, providing purchaser with that type of comparison.
Yes. Okay, next question is about SA 8000. If our final assembly factory is certified according to SA 8000, will TCO Certified still arrange factory inspection? And also a second question related to that, how will we proceed during COVID-19, during the COVID-19 pandemic? Steve, maybe you want to comment on that one.
So yes, we do factory inspections, but we focus on the higher risk factories. S8000 we consider to be a rather low risk. We give it the best risk category rating that there is on our accepted factory list. So these won't be our major focus, because S8000 being part of that certification, you already have surveillance audits at frequent cycles. When it comes to the COVID situation, then definitely we have experienced during 2020 certain restrictions on being able to get access to the factories. We've given a 12 months extension to most due dates when it came to the due date that was falling in on last year 2020. So we gave an extension to these because of the complications around getting access to the factories. We continue to monitor the situation. We know that there are several online audits now, which are external audits being conducted by video cam and and documentation, but these are becoming less frequent as options. The optimal part is being there physically in the factory, but we are willing to consider if there are country restrictions on auditors entering the country, for example, or entering factories, then we are willing to consider that these offline audits take place instead.
Online take place instead.
Online.
Yeah. All right.
Webcam online.
Yeah. All right. So next question. Andreas, please explain the difference between post-consumer recycled plastic and post-consumer recycled materials in section 3.4.
Yeah, sure. So with TCO Certified, we have been tracking PCR plastics for a long time now. And with Generation 9, we wanted to move into other materials as well and give the brand owners an opportunity to show off if they are working with post-consumer recycled materials and the other materials that is not plastics. We have received some feedback that the definition will, be extremely broad, since it would include all other materials. So we are open to discuss to limit the scope to a certain amount of specific materials that should be tracked and that might be better to track and compare against. But that is the difference. So post-consumer recycled plastics, that's just plastics, and the materials is basically everything else, metals, rubber, you name it.
Mm. All right. Okay, so next question is about some of our anti-bribery questionnaires, or the anti-bribery questionnaire. The supplier template and the anti-bribery questionnaire, are they finalized or are they still drafts? Steve?
Yeah, yes, these are still drafts, so we still welcome comments on them.
Okay. All right. Different question. In section 352 for PCF method, what is the difference between class B and class C? Victor, maybe you can take that one.
Absolutely. So the difference is basically transparency on the method. I mean, for class B, we consider, an LSA report which shows the impact of components on the methodology to end up with the result, with the carbon footprint result. But for class C, we consider like the PIA tool, for example, like I mentioned before, that you have a result from a method that is accepted, but it's not further explained into how what the effects are for each different component, basically.
Okay. The next one I think I'll address to you also, Victor. For the item which is not mandatory, like for benchmarking, will TCO development publish these indicators online, visible to the public?
So absolutely, in some way these will be published. We are still working on a benchmarking system that we've talked about, and we hope to release that in connection or closely after Generation 9. We will go out with more information regarding this once we get closer to the final product. We need to finish the Generation 9 document before we can actually complete the benchmarking system. So we will go out with more information regarding how we will use those SPIs later on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Regarding 2.1, so I think this is your question, Steve. Major parts suppliers depend on final assembly's definition. Any clear definitions for such major?
Okay, so this point is actually checked with the RBA and SED 1000 audits. For RBA VAP, the auditor is looking to check the point of, as I was talking earlier, the supplier program of E12.1 and E12.2, and the final assembly sub-supplier program. These are connected with these checkpoints. So what the auditors will look for is to make sure that the definition of major suppliers is a credible one. And if they do find, and if they find the obvious suppliers are not being listed in that, then it would be a non-compliance. But these are the points that we want to see compliance with when it comes to audit types that we approve.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Completely different question. Victor, must the ISO 50000 TCO certification be complete before June 2023?
Yeah. We launched the final document in June, and then the application period starts. But the first certificates are launched, or you're able to get those in December, when we actually publicly officially launched the generation. So the dates for the ISO 50001 certification are applied from the launch in December. So in this case, it would be completed before 2023 December, so not in June.
Mm. Okay, provided that you are one of the applicants that apply during that time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right, another question for you, Victor. In section 3.5, what is the implication for passing or not for TCO certified of only class A for all 3 criteria, method, age, availability, or only class E and D?
Yes, so I think this kind of connects to what I spoke about earlier, but I mean, currently there's no implication. This is an optional SPI. If no information is provided for the product, it will receive the lowest classification. But we want to promote products which have conducted PCFs, and we want to be able to point in the direction of where can purchasers find these product carbon footprints estimations for certified products. So it won't be any negative impact other than that purchasers can't find them easily from Product Finder, for example.
All right. Okay, here's a very general question that I think Andreas can help us with some guidance. If we submit our products for generation 9 between June and December, do we have to fulfill both generation 8 and generation 9 criteria?
That's a good question. So if you are applying for generation 9 only, then you only need to fulfill the requirements in generation 9. But if you want to receive, the so-called in-between certificate, the generation 8 certificate, while we're waiting for the launch in December for generation 9, then you will need to comply with generation 8 criteria as well. I hope that clarifies things.
Mm. Yes, but we always consider the higher number, the higher generation, to be, superior.
Yeah,
right?
Usually, but we have done quite some changes. And just to be clear, I don't want to, say that generation 9 will be able to cover all generation 8 criteria, since we have not released the final documents. I won't be able to say that with 100% certainty. Things can change until the final criteria document is released in June. That is the general rule, but I just want to say that if you want a generation 8 certificate in between June and December, then you need to comply with all the criteria in generation 8 as well.
Okay, yeah, better safe than sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next question. We have to wrap up soon, but maybe 1 or 2 questions more. Regarding desktop computer, does the product housing in mandate 7.4.1 include the housing of internal and external power supplies? Steve?
Yeah. Yes. For plasticizer 7.4, the product housing definition covers plastic enclosure parts used for external enclosures, or the casing that protects the internal components of the product. So yes, internal and external power supplies are in scope. However, those cables that are inside the assembled electronic component are still exempted.
All right. Okay, so I think, well, maybe 2 questions more before we wrap up. What is the rationale for adding the EEI? It will cause confusion. I'm not really sure what's meant by this question, but Victor, maybe you can you can.
Yes, so I think that it's connected to the energy efficiency index for the displays, and the rationale is basically since the lapse of the Energy Star agreement with the EU in 2018, we've heard from a lot of purchasers who have difficulties in their procurements of how to satisfy the energy requirements. So we want to add the energy efficiency index for these products that now receive a new update on the EU level with new compliance levels in order for them to make an easier choice of seeing, does this product meet the requirements in my procurement.
Okay. All right.
So
Very last question.
customers.
Does the new standardized external PSU mean that the DC cable of notebook adapter must be designed with a Type-C connector? Quick answer, please, Andreas.
Yeah, so the quick answer is no. We revised this criterion from draft 1 to draft 2 just to require that the product itself can support to be charged through one of its USB Type-C ports, and if it does not have one of these ports, it must be able to be charged wirelessly through the QI protocol or the specification. So for the standardized external power supply having to be designed with a Type-C connector, this is moved to the SPI section. So you will be able to receive a higher classification for the external power supply if it supports this.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to wrap up. We've spent almost 2 hours now talking about Generation 9. And I'm sure there are still questions. Please send in your questions to us and give us your feedback. That's very important for us. And as mentioned, you can do this via our website that's dedicated to Generation 9, or send us an email, or ask for a meeting, and we'll try to accommodate that. Thank you so much for listening, and please keep those comments coming.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, all my colleagues also.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.